Friends of the Dar, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to our 25th cultural season with our weekly Monday lectures. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Mr. Michael Alram as our guest lecturer. Tonight's lecture, entitled The Coin Collection of the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, and the Maria Theresa Thaler as international currency. Coin collections are among the world's oldest museum collections. Tonight, the Kunsthistorisches collection is among the 5 largest and most important collections in the world, with a special focus of the collection lies in the coin production of the Habsburg themselves. Presented by Mr. Michael Alram, Mr. Michael is the director of the coin collection of the museum in Vienna and the vice president of the Austrian Academy of Science. His research focuses on ancient and medieval numismatics and monetary history. Please make sure to turn your mobile phone off and welcome Mr. Michael. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to be a participant of the Dar al-Athar al-Islamiyyah 25th cultural season, to be invited and to give a lecture today. I'm very grateful to Sheikh Husa al-Sabah for inviting me. Many thanks. And I also want to thank His Excellency Sigurd Pacher, the ambassador of Austria here in Kuwait, because actually it was his idea to bring me here to Kuwait, and it was also his idea to talk about the Maria Theresa Thaler. The idea developed, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, and actually it was in combination with the 300th anniversary, the 300th birthday of Maria Theresa, which we celebrated in 2017. Unfortunately, our schedule was not fitting together, so I'm here in 2020, but I think the Empress will forgive us, and we are celebrating this year her 303rd birthday. This morning, I also had the great pleasure to visit the Al-Fan exhibition, which I know also from an exhibition in Vienna in 2011 in our museum. In Vienna, we had about 350 objects, but also a lot of coins were part of this exhibition. And this leads us back what you already heard in the introduction. Coin collections are indeed among the world's oldest museum collections. Since millennia, people have been interested in old coins and precious objects and as historical documents. Princes saw buried hoards comprising gold and silver coins discovered on their grounds as a welcome income and a welcome addition to their treasury. These precious metal coins were incorporated in the treasuries, out of which evolved many later art collections. These coins were also potent symbols of the dynastic connections and authority, and were highly valued and bore witness to a ruler's ancestors and precursors. What I show you here is one of the most famous pieces in our collection. It comes from Roman times, and it was part of a huge gold hoard which was discovered in 1797 near a little village called Zomlio. Today, this village is in Romania. In the 18th century, this was part of the Hungarian kingdom, and so also in the possession of the Habsburg dynasty. So all this gold came to Vienna. Later it was distributed between the collections in Vienna and the collection in Hungary, in Budapest. What you see here is a gold medal which was commissioned by Emperor Constantine the Great for his son Constantius II. You see him on the obverse with shield and lance. The coin was very prestigious, of course, for the issuer, but it also possessed a significance for its future owner, which we will see later. The prestigious character of this piece is evident, of course, from its extraordinary value on the one hand, and from the choice of images and the message that it conveys on the other. Constantine is portrayed as delight of the Romans and a ruler legitimized by God together with his two sons, as it were immortalizing the glory of the Constantine dynasty. You see him here standing in the middle between his sons, and out of a cloud the hand of God is coming out and putting a wreath on his head. However, the medallion not only contributed to exalting the imperial Constantine family, but must also have been an object of extraordinary prestige for its later owner, most probably a Germanic chieftain. You can see it clearly. The coin is framed in an ornate setting, attached to which is also here a loop on the top. So it was thus evidently worn as a pendant, a supposition confirmed also by the clear signs of wear on the reverse. The setting and loop were probably made in a Germanic goldsmith workshop, and in this way adapted to the taste and fashion of the Germanic princes of the time. Now, let's come back to the coin collection of the Kunsthistorisches Museum, which evolved out of the collection of the Habsburgs who ruled in Austria for more than 600 years. What you see here is one of these wooden coin cabinets in which the coins still are stored today. The next slide shows you a view of our permanent exhibition with the original showcases when the museum was opened in 1891. So it's also a historic exhibition, what you can see here. The oldest preserved inventory of the collection dates back to 1547 and comprised already several thousand items, primarily coins of the ancient Roman emperors. Why, you may ask, the Roman emperors? Well, the Habsburgs saw the Roman emperors as the legendary ancestors of their own dynasty. This is a very famous painting also in our museum. It's from Tizian and was painted approximately between 1567 and 1568. And it shows Jacopo Strada, an art collector, and also he was director of the imperial treasury under Emperor Ferdinand I, when at the same time when we have the first inventory of the coin collection. And what you see here, Jacopo Strada, he collected not only ancient sculptures from Greek and Roman times, but he collected also coins, and some of these coins also came in the imperial treasury of Ferdinand I. The coin collection was also a particular favorite of two 18th century Habsburg rulers, Emperor Charles VI and his son-in-law, Emperor Francis I, the husband of Maria Theresa. Charles VI loved numismatics and intervened personally in contemporary coinage. To enhance, for example, the artistic and technical quality of his own coin production, he founded an engravers academy at the Mint of Vienna, which became very famous throughout Europe. What you see here is Charles VI painted on a fresco in the Kunsthistorisches Museum. What is important for us is the little young man who stands at his side. He holds in his hand a coin album of Charles VI, which he always took with him when he traveled abroad, so that he was able always to have some of his beloved coins with him. Charles' son-in-law, Emperor Francis I, the husband of Maria Theresa, was another important collector of modern coins. He made the most of his exalted rank as emperor to acquire especially rare examples from all over Europe. Not least, that's quite interesting, with some political pressure to avoid expenses. The findings of scholarly historical research and new focal points added in the 19th century have then changed numismatics considerably. Purely descriptive numismatics was joined by an interest in the function of coins as a means of payment, and thus in the history of money, which in turn also broadened the focus of the collection. Today, the collection's holdings grew to around 600,000 artifacts, dating from 3 millennia. And it is, as you have heard, among the 5 largest and most important coin collections in the world. It comprises coins, medals, as well as paper money and shares, primitive money, revenue stamps, seals, scales, and weights to weigh coins, decorations, and historical dies for coins and medals. This makes the coin collection a collecting point for all kinds of documents related to money and in all forms of his functions. I brought you here a second very famous piece from our collection. It's a masterpiece from the Islamic world. Although I'm not a specialist in Islamic coinage, I thought it's worth to show it to you here in Kuwait. It's the only known piece in the world. It's a little silver medal commissioned by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mutawakkil. He's following here a Persian Sasanian model. The obverse features the frontal portrait of the Caliph and the reverse a standing male man holding a dromedary. The inscription reads, "In the name of God, Muhammad is the messenger, al-Mutawakkil bi Allah," and on the reverse we have also the year of the Hijrah 241. From literary sources we know that such commemorative coins were distributed among the populace on special occasions. We know, for example, that al-Mutawakkil had 5 million silver coins minted to distribute like rose petals among his assembled guests. This coin may also have been devised as a commemorative coin, as its reverse commemorates the submission of the camel-riding Bija tribe from Sudan. In 1891, the Kunsthistorisches Museum on the Ringstraße, which is in central Vienna, was formally opened by Emperor Franz Joseph to the public. Thus, the imperial art collections, including the coin cabinet, became an impressive new housing. In front of the building, you have a monument of Maria Theresa, which was set up in the 19th century. And here in the second floor is the permanent exhibition of the coin cabinet. Now let's talk about Maria Theresa. Without doubt, she was an extraordinary personality. She ruled over two kingdoms, Bohemia and Hungary, and the Archduchy of Austria for almost 40 years. Since her father, Emperor Charles VI, had no male heir, he promulgated a revised law of Habsburg dynastic succession, known as the Pragmatic Sanction. Thus, to keep the various Habsburg territorial possessions indivisible and to include the explicit possibility of a female Habsburg succession. That was not normal in Europe at that time. When Charles VI died in 1740, his constitution made it possible for Maria Theresa to become the heiress of her father's domains. However, this was not accepted by everybody. The new king of Prussia, Frederick II, you see him here on one of his medals, immediately invaded Silesia, Bohemia's richest province. You see it here, this is this part here. And the ensuing war, what we call of Austrian succession, lasted for more than 8 years until 1748. Maria Theresa herself complained, and now I'm quoting, of course in translation, "I found myself in this situation without money, without experience or knowledge, and finally without advice, when I was attacked by the King of Prussia." But she learned the craft of kingship very quickly. And this was even acknowledged by Frederick, her arch enemy. And I'm quoting again. "When it seemed that events presaged the ruin of the young Queen of Hungary, this princess, through her firmness and cleverness, escaped from such a dangerous corner and sustained her monarchy by sacrificing Silesia and a small part of the Duchy of Milan. It was everything that one could expect from a young princess who scarcely arrived on her throne, grasped the spirit of government, and became the soul of her council." So that's not a bad statement from her personal enemy. And indeed, Maria Theresa was not only successful in keeping together her domains, but she also executed innovative military, administrative, and social reforms. And last but not least, she gave birth to 16 children. What you see here is her coronation as king, and she's expressly said King of Hungary. There was also struck a commemorative medal showing her on horseback riding over the Coronation Hill in Bratislava. You see the castle of Bratislava here. This was part of the coronation ceremony, to ride on a black horse over the Coronation Hill with a sword in her hand, pointing to all four directions as a symbol to protect the country for all enemies. And here you have another commemorative medal showing the coat of arms of Bohemia, the Lion of Bohemia, holding the patriarchal cross of Hungary, and in the other hand, the coat of arms of the Duchy of Austria. And around you have her motto, Justitia et Clementia, justice and clemency, which we will also find then on the Maria Theresa Thaler. In 1745, here you have Maria Theresa together with her husband and her family, with her children. And the next slide, yeah, shows you Francis I, her husband, crowned as Holy Roman Emperor. And this happened in 1745. Francis Stephen, former Duke of Lorraine and Grand Duke of Tuscany, was elected and crowned Holy Roman Emperor. And subsequently, Maria Theresa also held the title of Romanorum Imperatrix, which means Roman Empress. And this can be seen as the final major step in recovering all her father's possessions. Now, Maria Theresa's monetary policy was targeted on stability. This was also not normal in Europe at that time. However, the costly wars against Prussia pushed the public debt to around 380 million florins when she died in 1780. However, because of the stable value of her gold and silver coins, she was able to rely on a well-functioning credit system supported by the City Bank of Vienna, the provincial estates, and external banks and lenders from abroad. What you see here are the main denominations of the currency system under Maria Theresa. In gold, it was the ducat; in silver, the thaler; then some smaller silver coins, the 20 kreuzer and 3 kreuzer pieces. And Maria Theresa's monetary reform introduced also the first copper coins in the Austrian-Hungarian currency system. You see them here. And also for the first time, paper money was issued. Also this was an invention of Maria Theresa's administration. The main denomination was the silver thaler or dollar. The name Thaler comes from the small village of Joachimsthal in Bohemia. Thal means valley. In the 16th century, there huge silver mines were found, and from this silver, these big Joachimsthaler coins were struck. Joachim was skipped and Thaler remained, so the name Thaler developed out of this name of the village. The thalers of Maria Theresa in 1750, because of the rising silver price, had the silver content to be diminished by approximately 7% against the former standard. And this new thaler, called the convention thaler, had now a raw weight of 28 grams and contained 23.4 grams of pure silver. And this new standard was extended by convention with the neighboring state of Bavaria in 1743, the convention thaler, you see it here. Subsequently, many other German states took part in this monetary union. So it's like a forerunner of the euro. And in Austria, the regulations of the Thaler Convention remained valid until 1857, so for more than 100 years. And if you look at the coins that it is a convention thaler, you always see here, according to this St. Andrew's cross, the little X at the end after the date on the coin. This new thaler coin was a great success. I have no success. And very well accepted by the population. Initially, its export was prohibited to avoid its outflow to foreign countries, but soon the fiscal authorities realized that selling thalers could be additional revenues for the treasury. And so between 1551 and 1763, already 17 million thalers were exported mainly to the Ottoman Empire. making a profit of 800,000 florins. That means 1.6 million thalers. So it's quite a good income for the state. The main mints were Vienna. You see here a thaler from the mint of Vienna. And from 1764 onwards, another mint, Günzburg. Here the little G under the feathers tail of the double eagle. Günzburg is today in Bavaria. At that time, it was in Swabia in the county of Burgau. The production was controlled very carefully by the state, and also the technical methods were very, very good, and the most modern machines were used to strike these thalers. I show you here at the right side a prize medal from the time which was issued by Maria Theresa, showing a so-called screw press. So these were the machines with which the thalers were struck. And on the other side, you see some dies for the Maria Theresa thaler, but what is important here are these so-called edge collars. With these instruments, the edging letters are embossed by rolling the blank through an edge die. This is the edge die where the blank was rolled through, and with these edge dies, the motto Justitia et Clementia was struck in the edge of the coin. The reason for this was, since the invention of coins, people try to clip the edges, to cut illegally precious metal from the coins. If you do this just with one coin, doesn't matter. If you do this with a lot of coins, of course, you can get a lot of gold and silver illegally. Of course, this was not allowed. The penalty was the death penalty, but nevertheless, it happened very often. And this edge inscription should prevent for clipping. And that was also one of the secrets why the Maria Theresa thaler was so successful. From 1750 to 1780, then 40 million thalers could have been struck by the Austrian mints. The larger part was produced for circulation within the empire. The other part, probably a quarter of the entire production, was privately ordered by trading firms which exported and used them for buying goods like coffee and many other luxury goods in the Ottoman Empire. In the archival documents, these thalers were soon called Levantina thaler. Levante was the Italian expression for the Near East. The main profit of the thaler business resulted in the higher valuation of silver in exchange of gold in the Middle East. Furthermore, the Maria Theresian thaler, and we call them for abbreviation MTT, and I will follow this custom now, the MTTs were much higher esteemed than the Turkish coins because of their excellent and stable silver quality, and subsequently also became something like a semi-official currency in the Ottoman Empire. A key figure in the spread of the MTT during Maria Theresa's lifetime was Count Johann von Fries. You see him here on the left side, who got the monopoly on the delivery of all thalers to the Ottoman Empire, both those minted on his behalf and those minted for other merchants. The main shipping centers were Trieste, here, Venice, close by, and Marseille in France. The main distribution center within the Ottoman Empire was Cairo in Egypt. The thalers which moved through the Austrian seaport of Trieste were especially important in the trade of coffee. which was shipped from the then port of al-Mukha in Yemen. Also, Aden became an important transshipment center. The Arab merchants, on their part, used the silver for trade then with India, Indonesia, and China, and so the MTT moved further east. The next slide is a nice curiosity. It shows you the Piazza del Ponte Rosso in Trieste, where a Maria Theresian Thaler was put as a monument to remind about the importance of Trieste as transshipment center of the Maria Theresia Thaler. When Maria Theresia's husband, Emperor Francis, died in 1765, Maria Theresia began to wear a widow's veil. You see it here very nicely. Also, on the coins, here a Thaler in the middle of 1765. At the beginning, the wheel was very big. It was too big, and this irritated the customers in the East. And of course, this was not good for the Thaler business, and therefore the officials created a smaller wheel like this, and this became then the model for all subsequent issues. Maria Theresa died in November 1780. However, the Thaler production with her portrait was continued to supply the trading company's ongoing demand. But the new dies had to be exact copies of the last lifetime issues, including the year 1780, and the signatures of the mint officials from the Günzburg Mint. S is the family name Schöbel, and F the family name Fabri, the two persons who were responsible in 1780 for the striking of the coins in Günzburg. When Günzburg was lost during the Napoleonic Wars in 1815, the dies were then transferred to Vienna and afterwards dispatched also to the Austrian mints in northern Italy, Milan, and Venice. In 1857, then a new German monetary convention was concluded by which the Thaler standard of 1753 was abolished. With this new convention, the MTT lost his legal tender in Austria and became a pure trade coin for private order. At that time, the production of the Austrian branch mints in Milan and Venice was even higher than in Vienna. However, then when these mints were lost, Milan in 1859 and Venice in 1866, production was again concentrated only in Vienna. In 1867, when the British had to finance an expedition of 30,000 soldiers from India to rescue British diplomats in Ethiopia, the only acceptable currency was the MTT, and therefore an urgent dispatch was sent to the Mint of Vienna for 5 million MTTs. From 1858 until the interruption caused by the First World War in 1915, the production of the MTT amounted to nearly 130 million pieces, so an extraordinary amount. After the First World War, the production in Austria was resumed in 1920. One of the main customers was the English silver trading firm Johnson, Massey and Company, who had a branch office in Vienna and stood in close contact with the Vienna Mint. They even negotiated a contract with the Austrian government to receive a monopoly for the MTT. However, in 1935, the Austrian government concluded a Thaler agreement with Italy because Mussolini needed the MTT to finance his costly war in Abyssinia. And in return, the Austrian government hoped to get Mussolini's support against Hitler. Based on this agreement, Austria resigned to strike MTTs for 25 years. Master dies and these edge collars were sent to the Mint of Rome, which struck 19 million pieces between 1935 and 1939. The Viennese Mint was only allowed to strike a maximum of 10,000 pieces a year and just for jewelry use. What you see here is a die engraved in 1853 by the then director Franz Gaul of the Engravers Academy at the Vienna Mint. And you see there is nearly no difference to the original dies made in the lifetime of Maria Theresa. It is reported that when Italy invaded Abyssinia between 1934 and 1936, they seized 1.7 million MTTs from the Bank of Ethiopia. What you see here is a banknote issued in 1932 by the Bank of Ethiopia, referring to a value of 50 thalers mentioned. So that's also quite a curiosity. As a consequence of the Thaler Agreement with Italy, the exclusive coining right of Austria was no longer respected. As Sir Robert John, at that time Deputy Master of the Royal Mint in London, clearly stated, and now I'm quoting, "This was not a question of preparing and issuing a copy of a current coin of an existing sovereign state, which would no doubt have been in contravention of international law. They gave their opinion that the MTT was not a coin and not even a token. Further, the image that it bore was of a person who had been dead for nearly 200 years and had headed a regime which had been defunct since 1918. It was merely a stamping on a piece of silver." Based on this legal statement, from 1937 onwards, the MTT was also struck in London, in Paris, in Brussels, and in Utrecht. Two examples, the above one is from London, the other one is from Paris. And I can tell you only real specialists can make a choice between these mints. So you really must have a good experience to decide if such a coin was struck in London, in Paris, or in Brussels. But even during the Second World War, and to save transport costs, the British government also used the Bombay Mint in India to supply their troops in Eastern Africa. And so between 1937 and 1942, 48 million thalers were produced by these above-mentioned mints. But even after World War II, the mints in London, Birmingham, Paris, and Brussels continued to produce around 18 million MTTs. After 1960, when the Thaler Agreement with Italy officially had expired, the Austrian government was finally successful in restoring its monopoly. Since 1961, the MTT exclusively was struck in Vienna again, and even today the Austrian Mint produces it. And I have one example here. I have to find it, in which pocket. It's put in here, and I may give it to Shaker just to have a look. By far the largest part of all the 400 million MTTs, which amounts to 9,400 tons of pure silver, struck during the more than 250 years, were traded abroad. The circulation areas can be recognized by written reports of travelers, merchants, and consular agents, but also by hordes and countermarking. What means countermarking? What are countermarks? Countermarks, we call these little stamps you see here, which were struck on a coin to provide additional legitimacy to the coin in those territories where it was countermarked. The countermarks should prove that the coin is genuine and guarantee the correct weight and fineness. We know such countermarks on MTTs, for example, from Java, from Mozambique, the Arabian Peninsula, and from many other regions in the Eastern world. Collectors, however, must be careful because many of these countermarks are fakes because they increase the market value of the coin. The MTT had come to circulate from the northwest coast of Africa to Madagascar and from the Turkish coast of the Black Sea to Muscat. It came to be legal tender in Saudi Arabia until 1928, Ethiopia until 1945, also in Kuwait until 1961, and in Yemen until 1963. And one of the many nicknames the MTT received in the Middle East was Rial Kabir, the big Rial. In the Hijaz, the unfavorable trade balance meant that the MTTs were exported back in large quantities to pay for imported goods. And so the Thalers found their way back to Europe, but also to places as far as Singapore or China. This is also described in a British consular report from 1884, and I'm quoting again. The great balance of trade always existing against Jiddah necessitates large remittances of specie to India, Singapore, the Persian Gulf, Egypt, and Europe. The total cannot be ascertained, but every steamer takes large amounts in various coins, such as the Maria Theresa dollars, the standard coin of Jiddah, and the Red Sea. End of quotation. There is also a dark side of the MTT. It was also one of the major currencies in the slave trade. In the 1870s, for example, the price for a male slave aged between 15 and 18 in southern Sudan was 15 to 20 MTTs. A horse cost 15 to 25 MTTs, a cow 3 to 5 MTTs. This painting shows you one of the most famous slave traders in the second half of the 19th century, Tipotip from Zanzibar, from East Africa. He was also famous because he also assisted European travelers like Henry Morton Stanley and David Livingstone during their African expeditions. Since the MTT came in only one denomination, commodities were used for small change. In East Africa, but also in Western Africa, we find accounts of exchange rates of MTTs against cowrie shells and other local so-called primitive monies. In Central Africa, for example, 40,000 cowries equaled 1 MTT. The MTT still circulated widely in the Middle East and even after World War II, when many countries, as we have seen, introduced their own national currency, the MTT still remained in circulation. In 1964, when Bahrain announced that it intended to introduce its own currency, the newspaper, The Economist, the issue of August 1st, 1964, reported, and I'm quoting again, For all practical purposes, most private transactions are still based on gold in form of British sovereigns and Maria Theresa thalers. This is true even in Kuwait, its dinar notwithstanding. In Kuwait, the dinar was introduced, as I said, in 1961, 1962. Through the Middle East and Africa, the MTT not only performed all the usual functions of money and as a medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account, but also became a unit of weight, for example, for gold in Ethiopia. And it formed part of matrimonial negotiations and was a favored source for jewelry. Here, one image from the wonderful book of Carla Semple, A Silver Legend, published in 2005, where you see women from Yemen wearing a festive costume with a lot of MTTs here around her breast jewelry. Now, at the end, what were the requirements for the MTT to become internationally used? A coin that bore the portrait of a 200-year-old monarch, of a state that no longer existed, and of a denomination long superseded. First and foremost, its acceptability rested on its high and stable silver standard, the inherent bullion value. Furthermore, the beautiful design, which did not change over the centuries, functioned as a mark of quality. Moreover, the extraordinary high technical standard made counterfeiting difficult and prevented, as already mentioned, clipping. And here you see now the inscription, Justitia and Clementia, on the edge of the coin. And with this slide, I would like to finish my lecture. Thank you very much for your attention.